Okay, everybody, we are back on a Tuesday. Thanks to my guy, Andrew Gazdecki of Acquire.com for joining yesterday. If you missed that episode, I know some people were out volunteering and taking the day off like we did and observing MLK Day. If you missed that episode, it's really worth going backwards a day because a lot of our founders are in the process of doing M&A because maybe funding's not available and it's time to get some returns for you, your team, your investors. No shame in the game. If you got to sell your company, do it right. And this is a great, great episode for you to go backwards and listen to yesterday's. But today, tons of news, Molly.
Yeah, exactly. We're back with a bang. Twist going up on a Tuesday. I'm sorry, yes. I didn't want to do it, but the way you said it, I just had to. Okay, we got a bunch of generative AI news. Of course, Getty preparing to sue Stable Diffusion creator Stability AI, Meta partnering with Shutterstock to train its AI, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella announcing that Microsoft will integrate OpenAI software into Azure, its cloud computing platform. We're going to kind of cover the debate, the controversy, the potential. It's a good conversation.
It's a great conversation. Then we do some startups and we have a long, thoughtful talk about hardware startups. We got a pair of hardware startups today announcing funding and products. One of them is building an AI-enabled lighting rig and solution for indoor farming. Super important, depending on the crop you're growing, to optimize that. And then Mill is a startup by the former Nest co-founders making an automated compostability trash, which is super interesting. And Molly and I were both enamored with that. But we talk about the lessons for other startup founders around hardware.
Yep, definitely. And P.S., bring me your climate software companies.
Absolutely. Scalable, please. High margin businesses, not low ones.
I'm here for you.
I'm here for you.
It is going to be a great show.
So stick with us.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by Squarespace. Turn your idea into a new website. Go to squarespace.com/twist for a free trial. When you're ready to launch, use offer code TWIST to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And AgeTech Collaborative. Startups, your go-to market team is waiting. AgeTech Collaborative's cutting-edge accelerator program connects you with investors, testbeds, like-minded innovators, and industry expertise. They're taking AgeTech to the next level. Join them at agetechcollaborative.org/twist.
Okay, everybody. It is not Monday. It's Tuesday.
It's that Tuesday that feels like January is the most stutter start month, isn't it? Like you kind of like you're starting to creep back, but like people aren't totally at work. And then there's like the post-holiday sickness. And then there's the random 3-day weekend just when you were starting to get a rhythm. Like I find January very frustrating. I'm just like trying to get back into it.
Yeah.
But you're not quite there. And then like now my kid's sick and it's like,
oh yeah. And I'm still sick.
And you're sick.
I was, had that. My daughters got sick a week ago and I got sick like at the end of the week. I was sick all weekend. But I'm looking out my window over here and I see sunlight. And so the rains have stopped and the sun has come back out today. So thank the Lord. I was thinking about this like sick thing. And my wife's like, oh my God, you need to take a day off. And I was like, do I? Because I have like a tickle in my throat. You may hear me cough maybe during the show, which I find terrible during podcasts, by the way. My advice to other podcast hosts for my listening pleasure is do not show up with a scratchy throat. But for me, I have to be here.
You really don't. We could have called in, Sonny. We had a plan.
Do I sound bad? Do you hear it in my voice?
You don't sound bad. What I hate is if you did sound bad, I would have been like, get the hell off my Zoom. Because it is sort of just like there's a lot of work you can do when you're sick. But if you sound like crap, nobody wants to hear that. And I feel like there's a tendency for people to just be like, it's fine. I know I'm like,
when I can tell the person's in pain from their sore throat. I'm just talking about sore throats for people in our profession. If I sense you're in pain, it makes it painful for me to listen to the podcast and I want to change the podcast.
Right.
No matter how good the conversation is, if you have that raspy, I can tell you're having a hard time speaking, I actually have changed the podcast when I've heard.
I have to. Don't do it.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, this is a performance, right? Like we don't want to give people 70 or 80%. Like when you sound like crap, it's just not that. I think is like a hard line. If you sound bad,
okay,
don't do it.
Well, I mean, and here's an opportunity for AI. Like, touch up my appearance.
That's what we were going to do
right now. We don't need makeup on podcasts anymore. I used to have makeup artists come to the studio when we did live tapings because the HD was so unforgiving. But on Zoom, touch up my appearance at 30, 40, 50% is the same as makeup. So makeup artists, I used to spend $10,000 a year on this podcast on makeup artists. It was $100 every time a guest came in. Then it became like 200 inflation. And the show used to be two guests a week, maybe. So it was 400 a week, 50 weeks a year. Yeah, it was even more.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 grand a year. And so we had a makeup line item. No more. Because of technology. Now, if we can make ourselves look a little bit better here on the margins with the touch up, why can't we do that with somebody who has a cough or a tickle in their throat in audio? I wonder if for the producers, if there is a filter for a raspy voice. I was thinking, Molly, one of the benefits of remote work is I can work when I'm sick.
Yeah.
Which maybe is a sickness in it itself.
A little bit. It depends, right? Because there are definitely times when you are too sick to like get dressed and shower and commute, and you'd be infecting other people if you were like on a bus or BART or something. And it's, like that's really real, but you might not be too sick to work. Like it's pretty rare. And even if I'm too sick to talk, for example, like couldn't be on the pod, it's pretty rare for me to be too sick to like email. I think the last time I can think of in the last 10 or 15 years that I was legitimately too sick to do anything was COVID, where I just was like, oh yeah, I can only sleep. Like I couldn't even watch TV. It was too much input. It was awful. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's true. Like you can power, but it does make me wonder if then does the sickness last longer? Because you should just be resting. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if resting, how much that actually helps. But I'm always incredibly frustrated.
The only thing
in the 4 to 5 times when I'm sick that I don't want to get people contagious and I wouldn't have gone to an office. I still would like to get work done, and I would work from home. And now that everybody's working from home, it works just fine. So anyway, it's interesting.
Yeah. But if you sound like crap tomorrow, let's just keep an eye on it, or an ear on it, if you will.
Yeah. Haha. Listen, if you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to do a side project, Squarespace is an amazing place for you to start. Why? Well, it's the platform where you can build or sell anything. I've been talking about Squarespace for a decade because it is the absolute best place for you to take that first step in being an entrepreneur or starting a project or even putting up a portfolio of your work. We love it at launch. We use it for all our different projects. When we have to put something up like remotedemoday.com, man, we can get it up and running in minutes. The feature train from Squarespace just keeps coming. The product velocity at that company is exceptional. And when they ship it beautiful. Beautiful templates, inventory management APIs, advanced analytics, 24/7, 365-day a year, award-winning customer support. And hey, it's going to look great on any device. They also have appointment scheduling. So let's say you're a trainer or something, or you're a coach and you need to manage appointments. Great. You want to take payments for content or for a product. You can do that. You don't need to hire an army. You just need to go to squarespace.com/twist and start a free trial. That's all you need to do. Squarespace.com/twist, and make sure you use the offer code TWIST for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. You can get your domain there at the same time. We love you, Squarespace. Thank you. On behalf of all the startups, capital allocators, and tech enthusiasts who listen to this podcast for being our longest running partner. It means the world to us. Squarespace.com/twist. Use the promo code TWIST, please. All right. I think I predicted for the last year that there would be a ton of lawsuits. I did not predict they would happen this quickly, but there is a clip of me a year ago talking with you about DALL-E, where I said, if you're a photographer, I encourage you to call Getty if you sold them your photographs and to say, what are you doing about our IP being exploited? How am I being paid for this AI training? To call your stock photography, because this is going to remove the need for stock photography in the world or stock illustrations. And this morning I saw across the news headlines and the wires that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Getty Images is suing the creators of the AI art tool Stable Diffusion for scraping its content, saying that Stability AI, the tool in question, unlawfully scraped millions of images from its site. It is being described as a significant escalation in the kind of, as you predict, the long incoming copyright battles between copyright holders and some of these tools. The AI firm is arguing that the amalgamation of data for products like Stable Diffusion is covered under the fair use doctrine. However, there are some glaring signs here, including an analysis of the Stable Diffusion's dataset, which found that it contained a large amount of content from Getty Images that is watermarked. And that when...
Oops.
Exactly. And that there are examples of images, and this is amazing, that have the watermark right on them.
Wait. So Stable Diffusion created images and the AI produced the Getty watermark.
Yep. Because clearly those images are in the data set.
Right.
And so when Stable Diffusion, it was like, give me a look at two misshapen trolls playing football, one with a freakishly long arm. I don't know. This is just what I'm looking at here. Then it was like, okay, cool. Here you go. And then included in that image, because clearly this is the origin, the data set, is the Getty watermark. Now, that feels like a pretty easy one to have solved ahead of time.
If you were trying to steal, and that would show a ton of intent. What this shows is they did not have the intent to steal because they didn't try to cover it up, right? Cover up is greater than the crime. I think they were not thoughtful and they didn't consult lawyers when they created this technology. Any lawyer would tell you this is a derivative work, and I'm not a lawyer and I told you this, and that you're infringing on the creator's right to monetize their content in the future and in future mediums. So when you make something, you have the right to it not only in the mediums that exist, but in future mediums, etc. So this is a serious violation. It will result in a settlement of millions of dollars, I predict. We may not get that settlement. It may be done quietly. But yeah, they're going to have to remove all of this. And this would be the equivalent of like, I stole your design. Like I took a design of a dress or something from Gucci, and I stole the design of the dress and I included the Gucci logo on it, right? Like, the person's guilty, right? When you're selling the purses that you stole. It's just a straight up knockoff.
Well, and this is just such an interesting, and I want to do a small correction here. The lawsuit has not officially been filed. Getty has commenced legal proceedings in the High Court of Justice in London. So it might be a little bit of a linguistic difference, but just to be as specific as possible here, which clearly the Stable Diffusion folks were not. So this gets to a couple things: data and data integrity and data cleaning. So like there's the saying garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
And in this case, what we're seeing is copyright in, copyright out. It should have been a fairly trivial task to filter watermarked images out of your data. So I do that like almost every, like for the last couple of years, I've done this presentation about data to the graduating class of Notre Dame's data science school. And they offer like a master's. And literally one of the things I say to them is like, hey, FYI, for the first few years of your career as a data scientist, you're going to be a janitor, because cleaning data is the key to providing usable data to models. And so obviously, whoever trained this AI did not or could not be bothered to just filter out images that are watermarked. Like that is the most basic level of care. And it makes me like very worried about what is going into these models on every level, right? Whether it's like, I don't know, massive troves of racism or stolen or personally identifiable information. It's like, okay, what are the data sets that these things are being trained on? Who's in charge of cleaning them up? Even the tiniest bit. You left watermarked materials in there?
I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, where did they source their, and this is by citations, as we've been talking about the last couple of months. And I've been saying like, well, where are the citations in ChatGPT? And Google's putting them in. So Google identified this issue. The disruptive new companies, part of, and this is a bigger startup lesson, part of being a new startup is to move fast, break things, and to beg for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. So as offended as I am as a content producer, or as offended as you might be, I'm not sure the degree to which you find this offensive. I suppose people in the content business
No,
always
it's
find it a little
offensive.
bit. Yeah. I think if you're in the content business, you find it offensive.
It's watermarked. I mean, for God's sake.
Yes. And so this is stealing. This would be like taking your photo library off of your phone and then creating this AI based on your personal photos. These are another group of people's private IP. They own this. This is stolen material. Let's call it what it is. They train their AI on content they stole from another party who does commerce with it. Now, what this says is, as a startup, you should break the rules. Let me explain. I am not encouraging you to this, but this is what we've learned in commerce and in industries. Go ahead and break the rules, because how much money has Stable Diffusion or Stability AI? One of them is the open source product, one's the commercial, right? So this company, how much money have they raised on doing this stolen material demonstration?
At least their most recent raise appears to have been $101 million. That was in 2022. And I think they raised before that. Oh, and they're valued at $1 billion post-money.
Okay, so you have $1 billion valuation. You got $100 million in cash at a minimum. Who knows what else has happened?
Yeah.
Pays for a lot of lawyers. Pays for a lot of settlements.
Right.
So message to the market, if you're Airbnb, if you're Lyft or Uber, whoever you are, and you're doing things in the world, go ahead and break the rules. Raise the money, and I'm not saying I agree with this or endorse it, so don't clip this in a funny way, aggregators. I'm telling you what capitalism has learned. Capitalism has taught us this.
Has trained the data that founders have been trained on.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I am not endorsing wholesale stealing of other people's IP to raise at a high valuation, and then go spend that money on lawsuits and settlements after the fact. But the fact is, Getty Images deserve that $100 million investment. The majority of what was just demonstrated by Stability AI was based on, if it was based on their work, what we will learn, the second order impact of this is the people who should own this business are the people who own the content and the IP. And they should go take the Stability AI open source project. They should go hire and steal away people from Stability AI. And they should make a product that creates images on the fly when you have a subscription to Getty Images, which people do. And it should then pay royalties to the original source material. And Getty should then make sure that they have permission to do so. Hey, everybody. It's time for a special interview with an old friend of mine, Rick Robinson. He is the GM of AgeTech Collaborative, which is brought to you by our friends at AARP, which I think, Rick, correct me if I'm not, at 52 as of last week. Am I able to be in AARP now?
You are welcome to join.
Oh, man, you and I got old.
Yes.
What happened? This is amazing. You guys are really excited about engaging the startup community in building technology for folks who are getting up there in age.
Yeah, it's really exciting for us developing the AgeTech Collaborative to try to put a focus on what we call AgeTech. And you might be wondering, what is AgeTech? Well, it's the intersection of longevity and technology, really. These are health tech companies. These are fintech companies. These are wellness companies. Essentially, it's going to be almost every company because the market 50 plus is becoming so enormous that they can't be ignored. And then you've got a lot of people who are supporting that market who can be any age. It's kind of a white space because not a lot of product developers and marketers and startups and investors have put a lot of focus on this, but it's huge and it's growing. In fact, it's around $8.5 trillion in terms of economic value in the US right now.
All right, thanks, Rick. When you're selling into the 50 plus market, having a relationship with AARP gives you a bunch of credibility, of course. In the meantime, you can go learn more about the AgeTech Collaborative at agetechcollaborative.org/twist. And join us later in the program and you hear more about the AgeTech Collaborative and how they help innovative startups succeed.
So I have a little bit of a hot take around this because there are a couple other lawsuits and a partnership.
What's your take, Molly?
Well, okay. So as context for my take, another lawsuit has been filed against GitHub's Copilot, which is sort of the code creation tool.
Yes.
There's an announcement that Meta and Shutterstock have partnered so that Meta can train its AI on Shutterstock's catalog of images. And so Shutterstock is going to make some money here. But what I would say is, no matter how this shakes out, and I think you're right that there will be a lot of lawsuits. Getty didn't create any of this stuff it owns. Neither did Shutterstock. Like, creators are going to get screwed once again. This is exactly reminiscent of the digital music wars back in the day. And in fact, Getty's CEO likened this whole thing to Napster and Spotify and saying, well, Napster was just stealing, but Spotify negotiated these deals. And so Spotify figured out a legal way to do this. And that's what we want these AI tools to do. And they probably will. And there will be a Shutterstock model. And then Shutterstock will make money and Getty will make money. So when I was in college, I covered the Unabomber arrest for my school newspaper. Like, I was there on the mountain when they brought him down. There was a team of 4 of us, 3 photographers and myself. And a white Bronco, like, mysteriously came down. And we were like, well, that's weird. What's that car about? And so our two of our photographers were like, we're going to follow it. And I was like, great, go, do it. So they follow this Bronco all the way from Lincoln, Montana, this little town, to Helena. And they proceed to get the first photo of Ted Kaczynski post-arrest.
Wow.
Couple of college kids.
Good get.
At which point they start getting calls from Getty and companies like them. And the AP being like, you have to give this to us for free. Otherwise, you'll, be dead to us in this industry. And Getty being like, we're going to offer you the lowest possible amount that we possibly can, and da-da-da-da-da. And they negotiated a whole thing, and it was great. And I think they got college paid for, and it was awesome. I think they ended up selling the photo to Getty. But when that photo ends up in the AI output and Getty gets a royalty, they will not. So, like, this is a really bummer dystopian take.
Sold the image.
But the content aggregators... Sure. They sold the image for
they signed a contract knowingly selling all rights to the photo for all time in perpetuity.
Yes.
Correct?
And every artist who signs with a record deal because they want to get famous signs away the bulk of their potential. Like, I'm just saying.
Well, no, they get royalties. There's
that
a royalty
the labels
structure.
and the royalties are tiny. And look at what artists have to say about what they get paid from Spotify and YouTube. I'm just saying the creators are going to get screwed again. Like, these aggregators of images will make the bulk of the money. If people
sign a contract and they have an attorney, I would say that's much different magnitude in terms of getting screwed than having somebody steal your content, obviously, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying, like, if you look at where the money is going to flow, it will be the exact same thing as a musician saying we're making pennies off of Spotify streams.
Yeah, I mean,
so like I'm under no illusions that we're standing up for the little guy here. We're standing up for Getty and Shutterstock and the people who have the money to come along and say, like, I know you're like a starving artist and you'll do anything you can, sign this contract, and they do.
I'm not so sure. I mean, the value of taking
but that's because you're like an uber capitalist.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a trade. I'm putting aside what happened decades ago when musicians didn't have representation or photographers didn't have representation. But there is a value, to the content that they provide. And if they sell the rights away and they had representation, hopefully they had good representation, I have less of a problem with it. And the value of certain things in society.
Okay. Yeah.
What's that?
I'm just saying that's my hot take.
But no, I get it. I always look at did the person have representation? Like, did these people who sold their images, or does a professional photographer have it? And then there's another thing that's happening.
Usually no, but maybe.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of times people get screwed on their first record deal and they screw the record label on the second, or they don't get, like we talked about last week with, getting $5 million for your first picture and then getting 15 or 20 or making a back end of $75 million on the second. And then you have them over a barrel because you're Robert Downey Jr. How do they do Iron Man without you? Right. The whole franchise is, based upon you. So, but really, the other hot take here is, I think if we believe this is going to be a commodity, this technology, right? And they're based on open source projects, which you can fork. And I think Sam Altman kind of said that last week when you went to that thing, that this would be commodified in some way.
Kind of, yeah.
And there are many projects working on it. I think the choice will be either Stability, ChatGPT, and, Facebook and other Google, other places. If they want this technology, they will do partnerships with those companies, or those companies will embed it in theirs. Those companies used to, if you remember, they would partner with content people would partner with Yahoo to host their content. And then eventually wait a second, I can put up my own website. So this will be part of the process. I think the next shoe to drop will be somebody will create software to sell to the Gettys of the world to make their own derivative products. They'll sell that content. And then Wikipedia will make their own AI tool to write content based on what's in the Wikipedia already.
Would that mean that somebody created the tool to, like, that middleware layer? Like, here's how to turn your data into a chat GPT? Like, wasn't that sort of the original goal of something like OpenAI, was to open source the technology to do that?
To secure the bag.
And I think that was like one of the things that Stable Diffusion said too, right?
Well, Stable Diffusion is based on an open source
Stable
project.
AI, right. Stability AI.
Stability AI is based on the open source. So it's the WordPress of that.
Right.
And here's the other rub. Eventually this stuff will make it to the desktop, and what you do on your desktop is your business and isn't subject to the same rules as another company providing services. So if you load a web page to your computer and you take the ads out and you do that on your computer and you don't republish it, or you cut and paste some content and you make a document with, the 100 stories on, Superman that you found in the New York Times, you're allowed to do that for personal use. You can do all kinds of things that break copyright law, that would be breaking copyright law in a commercial venue when you're doing it privately. So here's another possibility. I have my own version of Stability AI or ChatGPT running on my computer. It downloads sources of information and it makes that content on my computer. I'm not paying anybody to do it. They're not profiting from it. I'm just doing it personally. Number one, people will not know that you did it. And number two, so just practically, it's kind of hard to enforce. Number two, it's just one person. So how is it causing a problem, for, the original copyright owner? And so that would be the equivalent of making your own remix of a song in the privacy of your own home and playing it for yourself. These tools are so powerful. I get the sense that eventually you'll be doing this on your personal computer. And then I think that's very hard.
Well, and we have not updated. I mean, I've been ranting about copyright and intellectual property laws for 20 years. We are not prepared for this conversation. Like, fair use remains somewhat uncodified. And it sort of argues that if it's a derivative work, it should be fine. Like, the reason Getty is likely to be successful in the short term is because there are freaking watermarks on the images that DALL-E is producing, right? So like the data, the lack of care with the data is incontrovertible. They took images that are incontrovertibly owned and put them in their data set. However, fair use does provide for derivative work. Yeah. So in the absence of codifying that really, really specifically into law, which we never really have, everybody just kind of guesses at what a derivative work is. But that is the stuff that's going to have to be worked out as we enter the era of AI, because there will be lawsuits that are lost, but there will be lawsuits that are won by Gettys and Shutterstocks and whatever, because derivative works is pretty vague. And that's why, when you declare, when you're always like, this is it, this is going to be the lawsuits and everybody's going to lose and whatever, I'm like, not all of them are going to lose, because derivative works is protected.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't know what that means yet.
I have extensive experience in this. And what I will say
What did I just say? About 20 years.
I have a lot of experience in this. What I'll say is, it's what has been codified is a test, which is to be interpreted by a judge and a jury. Now, that test very rarely gets applied because the chances of winning when you're doing something commercial are so low that people settle. And so the history of this is that it never goes to the mat. It gets settled long before that because it favors the content producer so much in a commercial arrangement. So if something was non-commercial, then, there's very little reason for a lawsuit to be brought because there's no money to be made or lost. And so where you see this is in reaction videos and on YouTube. So YouTube, has been an amazing proving ground of not having to go to court to mitigate or to reconcile these debates, right? to manage them. And what typically happens is, if money is turned on or off, if monetization is on or off on the video, becomes a deciding factor. When you're using our content, if you were to take this discussion and to make a reaction video to it, and depending on how much you use, the percentage used, you can kind of short circuit the entire discussion simply based on if monetization is on or off.
Right.
That's the key. And so here, and then the further test of it, is it going to make it impossible for that person or impact that person's ability to make money in the future? So it's a 4-part test. You can read about it on the Wikipedia. It's pretty straightforward. But in practicality, if you use other people's content on YouTube, the fair use comes in when it's educational, the percentage you're using, and if you're monetizing it.
And what you can see now, if you're watching it, is all of the ways that people have figured out how to play huge chunks of that movie, Megan, that we were talking about in the pre-show, I think, by saying that it's a reaction. Right. So what I'm saying is, this has yet to be everything. Yes, to everything you said. This has yet to be litigated to the mat. Because in most cases, what you had is a giant, right? Like you had the MPAA or Sony or Getty coming and saying, you infringed my copyright. And people were like, I'm tiny, I'm settling. Or they just took it down. Now you have Godzilla versus Mothra, and you have an area of the law that is still unsettled. So you got OpenAI on the one hand, right? Or Stable Diffusion on the one hand. You've got a company, you've got ChatGPT, you've got a company that's worth $29 billion now, today, coming up against Getty or coming up against all of these copyright holders. And what I'm saying is this is going to go to the mat now. And this area of law is still not totally codified. Fair use is still somewhat vague enough that I think we're going to see this fight. And I don't think it's a slam dunk.
Yeah, I'll disagree. I think all these companies are going to fold.
That's fine.
I think they're not going to be able to. No, I just,
You think OpenAI is going to fold? Like they're just going to be like,
100%. They will move towards only scanning data that they have access to, and they'll get permission and they'll pay licensing fees. And just like Napster, because I heard this exact argument, like Napster had a lot of money and, the music industry was ruthless about it. The same thing with YouTube.
But now the information they have access to is the entire internet. Like once you turn on Google and connect one of these things to search and the repository of human history, like how do you have permission stop that?
With lawsuits.
Lawsuits
become the backstop. And once people see the possibility of the existential, demise of their business, which YouTube did, they would have been an independent company had they not had those lawsuits. Those lawsuits force you to settle, and you will lose them. I think that I don't think it's that the law isn't codified. It's that the law is designed to not give a bright line so that there's less abuse and so that the market works it out. I think that's why it's like that. But it also depends on which market you're in. I think this might be filed in the UK for a reason. They may have started there because they know they're going to win there and they know content protectors. Just like people will jury shop here in the United States and they know California juries are super anti-capitalist and Texas ones and Delaware ones are super pro-capitalist. Yeah. And so
on the plus side, if that happens, then the data sets that the AI is trained on will be necessarily way smaller, which could extend the life of humanity. So win-win. Win-win.
Also, it will
just takes longer for them to get smarter than us and kill us. So
I think there is a question is, would the results be as impressive if they didn't have these proprietary data sets?
I 100% think that limiting the size of the data sets will make the AIs dumber.
Yep.
And that's a win for us. So I just talked myself into the lawsuit side. Yay, let's go.
It is unprecedented. That's for sure. The scale of this. Hey, everybody. It's time for a special interview with an old friend of mine, Rick Robinson. He is the GM of AgeTech Collaborative. which is brought to you by our friends at AARP. So how does the collaborative work? How do you help companies and investors kind of access these companies and these markets?
So essentially what we do is we look for companies, we incubate them, we invest in them, and then we bring them into this new environment we call the AgeTech Collaborative community. So yes, we have pitch competitions that we run throughout the year, themed, and some of them are open mic style. And it's a way for us to source and find great early stage companies, usually pre-Series A. We invite some of them into our accelerator program, which is extremely high touch, 8 weeks, 4 times a year, where we bring in aging experts. We help get them best prepared to deliver their product or service to the market. Then, as I mentioned, we often invest in these companies, and then they graduate into the AgeTech Collaborative community, which is an online platform that makes up an ecosystem that we're developing that includes, of course, the startups, investors, testbed organizations, enterprises, and business services, all in this one online environment where they can support and draw from one another.
Great. So there's an online community people can go visit. They can go visit that at agetechcollaborative.org/twist, agetechcollaborative.org/twist. And so if you want to build in that market, if you want to sell into that market, if you want to invest in that market, this is a great way for you to partner with AARP, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
But, the technology is real, and now we've proven that it has some value. And so Microsoft seems to be the primary beneficiary of all this in terms of taking these research projects and actually getting them to consumers as a finished product, correct?
Or at least out loud, which I think is interesting. So the news today is Microsoft CEO announcing at Davos that the company will integrate OpenAI capabilities into all of its existing products, and said it will give customers access to build on top of OpenAI software. So the thing that you just said about, take all of Wikipedia's information and turn it into a chat GPT. In theory, that is a bit of what Microsoft is doing, and it's doing that through Azure, its cloud computing platform. It means businesses will soon be able to use OpenAI's models in their own apps, and those tools include GPT-3.5, Codex, and DALL-E. We have, and I asked our producers to just pull a little bit of information on what some of the other big competitors are doing, because Microsoft appears to be the leader here. And it could be true, and it could be because they're the ones integrating the fastest. If you look, we know that Google has been working on AI that's so advanced that one of its own scientists thinks it's sentient. And we know that Meta, I think even Brad Gerstner has described them as effectively a huge AI company that's gotten really distracted by VR. They've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in AI, and so have Google with DeepMind. So Microsoft is taking the opportunity to leap out ahead. But I think the rest of the year is going to start getting a lot more interesting as some of these companies that maybe have been building behind the wall, let those monsters out in the open. I'm really into the monster movie analogy for all this today.
If this becomes like IBM Watson, which is fascinating to think that 6 or 7 years ago, IBM realized AI was going to be the future, having tools available, and they provided it to a lot of startups. They were very active. They sponsored a lot of our events. They were really active in providing Watson to startups, and they were just a little bit early. And now here we see it. OpenAI has essentially given Azure their own Watson. And since some of these things are open source projects, if you look at the top 10 most active open source projects right now, most followed, most edits, all that kind of stuff, participation, the majority are in the AI machine learning space. So I think that this is going to be the future, just like cloud computing for storage, or CPU and for CDN, content delivery networks. Yeah. It's going to, people are going to be all over this.
LTE, broadband availability. This is going to be the layer of a vast majority or a huge explosion in products and services.
And whose revenue this is then becomes the issue that we've been talking about with round tripping, when one big company invests in another company and then that other company gives them money back. According to reports, the revenue being booked by the work being done by ChatGPT is Microsoft Cloud revenue. And so I think that is now become codified, to use the word from the previous discussion. We're now getting some some feedback on that. So you have like Microsoft paying OpenAI to license this or investing in OpenAI, but then you have OpenAI hosted on Azure, and that revenue is going towards Microsoft. So these like round tripping cloud deals, I think is going to result in some serious SEC scrutiny, or just some scrutiny, just to make sure it's clean.
Because just to put a finer point on it, what might be happening here, and again, we don't know, but what might be happening here is that Microsoft is paying OpenAI to license the OpenAI software for Azure, and that 75% of that profit then goes back to Microsoft because OpenAI then has to pay to use Azure's cloud computing to perform each function.
Well, the question is, OpenAI has compute cost, right? A lot. We've heard this like 2 cents, 7 cents per query, whatever
Azure.
it is.
And then Microsoft gets 75% of OpenAI's profits. Sorry, that was to close the loop, if you will.
Yeah. So this weird investment deal combined with the fact of where is OpenAI hosting and where are they spending $3 million a deal, $3 million a day, reportedly. So if they're spending $3 million a day on Azure, that means they're shipping $3 million from their bank account to Microsoft's bank. And Microsoft is licensing ChatGPT software and investing in the company and getting some of their profits.
75%.
So but there's no profits right now, but eventually there will be profits.
Right.
So this is just one of these commingling of money going back and forth that makes one wonder, if you were to, this is I'll give the least charitable and the most charitable interpretation. The least charitable is ChatGPT is a massive compute resource, addictive product that could drive cloud revenue at Microsoft through the roof, which would drive their valuation at a multiple of that. And that might be incredibly high profits for Microsoft. So ChatGPT, this is the worst interpretation. ChatGPT created something to goose Microsoft's earnings. Microsoft then invested in ChatGPT on terms that none of us can understand. A $29 billion valuation for a company that's losing, I guess, $1 billion a year. So why would they do that? Well, it's obvious in the explanation. The most charitable would be, got to be hosted somewhere. And if they hosted it on AWS, it'd be the same cost. And Microsoft invests in companies and people buy software from each other. So here's the 20 other companies Microsoft has invested in and bought. And yeah, so
Microsoft has, the middle ground interpretation is that Microsoft has made a lot of investments to beef up its Azure offerings. So right, like I sort of feel like the middle ground here is, yeah, definitely. And they want to make some money off of OpenAI. But the ultimate goal is what Satya Nadella announced today, which is integrate these tools into Azure. So make a little money from OpenAI spending money on Azure, sure. Make some money from OpenAI, whatever it becomes as a company. But fundamentally, goose the product offering that is Microsoft Azure so that you can catch up with the competition and keep making money in the biggest money-making space that exists in computing right now.
Yeah, that would be a kind interpretation. Yeah.
Well,
I think people are extremely
that's just
jealous.
like the business, right? Isn't that just the business interpretation? Like make Azure irresistible. And if you happen to make a little incremental awesomeness on the side.
Beefing up the offering is great.
Yeah.
The problem comes in when money is, making a circle, right? And that's where accountants get involved and say, are you increasing the velocity of this just to, increase the value of both organizations in a non-organic way? And I don't know how you prove that. Yeah. Because it does get to what's the intent.
Is there like a little birdie that made you suspicious? Do you have some like inside reason to question?
No, it's the talk of the industry. There's a number of I think there's a number of factors at play here. The non-traditional structure and the flip-flopping of OpenAI from a nonprofit to a for-profit
Right.
then raising money at an insane valuation, then spending all this money on Azure Cloud. And I think then there's a whole level of jealousy of Sam Altman and the team over there for creating something that's worth $29 billion after presenting it as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And raising all this nonprofit money. So, or maybe there's some resentment. I'm just hearing this constant nonstop back channel of why is this, what happened here to go from a nonprofit to a for-profit? And then what's happening with this weird deal structure? So whenever you see a weird deal structure, everybody in Silicon Valley is like, what's going on? For good reason.
Yeah.
For really good reason. Because there were some weird deal structures going on in crypto too, right?
Right.
So I think right now there's just a heightened sense or people's, and listen, I'm not saying that there's anything funny going on here. I suspect there's not. I'm overwhelmingly suspect that. I do think there's a heightened Theranos, FTX climate right now. And if you present a really odd set of facts to the market is going to be like, well, that feels more like this bucket of weird things that we've seen occur as opposed to standard deal structure. It doesn't feel like a standard deal structure. It's not a standard deal structure.
Yep. That's a great explanation and good insider. Because
insider stuff. And the back channel is jealousy.
Non-standard deals are a reason for a red flag. And certainly, yes, there's a lot of jealousy. And I think also just maybe some disappointment, right? Whenever you set something up and say like, this is going to be the thing to save humanity. And then you see everybody like running toward developing it as fast as possible. Humanity be damned. And you literally have Sam Altman saying, the worst case here is lights out for all of us.
Yeah.
It's like, isn't that what? But so you're just doing that though and cashing out? Like,
it does seem like this is the negative back channel, is that this is a bag securing maneuver.
Right.
And so, but again, I think people are highly jealous of Sam Altman because he's brilliant and he's made a lot of money. And, this seems to be like the next Uber or the next Google or the next Facebook or the next Airbnb, right? It's certainly in valuation trending in that direction.
Well, let's go back quickly to the Satya Nadella genius, the GOAT factor of this, which is that as a reminder of what's at stake and why Microsoft wants to juice Azure, the product, and has been doing whatever they can to do that over the years. AWS is Amazon's entire profit center, its cloud computing business. AWS was
even on e-commerce, right?
The only lose money, I think, on e-commerce now. It's like flat at best. And then there was some analysis that came out recently that was like, actually, I think Amazon's retail business might be like terrible. Microsoft is profitable in multiple areas, so they're able to lose money on Azure, aka make investments to make it better. But it does give them a serious advantage to beef up that offering and say, I mean, who wouldn't want to flip to Azure if all of a sudden it's like, it can do it's got ChatGPT built in. Like, oh, okay, I'll take that for my startup.
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic your margin is my opportunity moment. So Google's revenue comes from search. Microsoft doesn't need to be profitable on Bing. They can be profitable on Office and the Windows franchises and their software platforms. Google launched their version of Office with Google Docs. And then you also have Amazon makes their money from, their profit center is obviously cloud. So yeah, this is the crazy like risk board, like the board game Risk, like where you can be aggressive in certain parts of the game and other parts of the game you can be conservative and be defensive. I think it all becomes a commodity real quick. I think it's going to be like storage.
Which honestly, I mean, if Sam Altman is as smart as he is being given credit for, then he clearly saw that coming, and maybe that's why he decided to secure the bag. It's like,
now would be the time to sell.
Get the bag now.
This might be the peak moment to sell before it becomes commoditized. And if it's open source, it will be. Why buy this if it's open source and you could fork it? Boy, does this make Google look smart for buying DeepMind when they did in 2014.
Right.
And incompetent for not getting more of the product out there to the public. They really have lost the PR race here. They really need to let the DeepMind people start releasing stuff.
And that I mean, there have been a couple that whole arena of Google's business has just been a mess, right? Like, they keep firing ethicists, and then they had obviously that big drama with Blake Lemoyne, the AI data scientist who said it was sentient and then got fired. And like, a lot of weird stuff has happened in Google's AI division. And maybe that's why they have failed to capitalize with like a consumer facing product. But it's certainly, they might not be behind technologically, but from a commercialization standpoint, they definitely are.
Yeah. And Facebook's got, I mean, this is now, I think, going to be the dialogue for the next 3 or 4 years is forget about crypto and Web3. I mean, use case matters is another thing I take away from all this. I was out over the weekend and somebody said to me, Jay Kyle is a very prominent billionaire venture capitalist, said, I remember a dinner with you 6 or 7 years ago. We were at this thing and you said 99% of these crypto things are grifts run by incompetence and everybody attacked you. And you held your ground. He said, it's the bravest thing I've ever seen. And you turned out to be 100% right. And I said, you want to know why that is? And he said, yeah, actually, I would like to know why you saw that. And I said, it's very simple. That wasn't an estimate. I had met with 100 companies. Exactly. And I wrote down on a piece of paper which ones I thought were frauds and which ones I thought were real. Yeah. And the number was actually 99. I was reporting a statistic. You thought I was being hyperbolic.
And it was a fact.
And he said, is that true? I said, it wasn't exactly like 100 on the nose. I had literally met, though, with hundreds of companies, certainly over 100, over a number of years, 2 or 3 years, and had them on the pod. And it was clear to me that high 90% were absolute incompetents and or grifters. And I think that's what we're seeing now, which is the reason I thought those things were not real was because when I said, show me the use case, explain to me what the user does and how does this save them time, save them money. And it's one of the great luxuries of my life of being an outsider. I was an outsider in journalism. I had to create my own magazine really to get published. And I made my own way into the tech business. I didn't go to Stanford or Harvard or, MIT. And I made my own way into venture capital, right? All 3 aspects of my career, I was an outsider coming in. I never came to it with some assumption that I understood it. So I always just asked very basic questions. And the very basic question you have to ask yourself is well, what can I do with this?
Right.
When you ask what you can do with DALL-E and ChatGPT, you can't stop thinking of use cases.
Right.
You can't stop seeing TikToks where somebody says, I took this book review and I took these 5 book reviews. I asked it to make me a review of a book. Then I took it and made an image, a series of images with DALL-E, and then I exported it and put voiceover technology on it. And I made a YouTube video, and then I wrote a script to make me 100 of these a day. So now I can publish my own reviews of books and summaries of books and publish them to YouTube and make money off of it. And you're like, okay, yeah.
And that's just one.
Incredible.
Last week, we killed law school.
Law school, right, yes.
Like literally.
Lawyers.
Last week, we got rid of the first year of law school. We were like, find me all the case law on this and show me the most winning strategies for beating a parking ticket.
We did it in our chat. Tell us, remember we were doing how many subscribers do Verizon and T-Mobile have for their wireless networks and, and asking it these research questions. And we're like, okay, yeah, we now have a producer ChatGPT that can do some research for us.
And so then not only did we come up with a bunch of use cases, but we came up with a bunch of use cases that have revenue / money savings attached to that.
Yes, that have economic impact.
We came up with products.
Yes.
It's 2 questions. It's what can you use this for? Yes. And how does it make money? And so far with AI, we've been able to answer that question or save money, right?
Yep.
We've been able to answer that question almost every time that we have come up with something. Whereas for all of those years, I remember being at Collision in 2015 or something and asking a guy to explain the blockchain and being like, great. Yeah. I think I understand what you're saying from a technology perspective, but what's that for? And how's, none of those questions could ever be answered.
Yeah. I mean, the immutability of it and the proof of work, proof of stake, all this stuff, it was very interesting with very little use case.
Yeah.
I'm like, for voting. And I'm like, you mean if I wrote on a piece of paper, who I voted for president and you had a copy of it and I signed it? Yeah, like that. And it's okay, how is that different than the piece of paper that I signed that was digitized?
It's immutable. It's immutable.
Well, yeah. And it's that's a really fancy word that means you can't change it. And it's okay. I can't change my signature on the paper either. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Your best question, Jason, was when people would be talking about like an immutable, decentralized Twitter. And you're like, what if someone posts like child porn or something? And they're like,
do you really want that?
Oh, well, you know, the algorithm would probably just put it to the bottom, but it'll be there forever. Like, oh,
okay, revenge porn, doxing. Yeah, okay, great, awesome. My
maybe
social
not
security number.
immutable solutions for everything. Maybe.
Yeah.
Here's an immutable website that can never be taken down with everybody's stolen photo rolls, camera rolls. Like, great. What a contribution to society you've made.
Yeah.
I saw this. Hardware companies are hard. But I saw one today and I was like, I'm so rooting for this company. I'll buy it. I would never invest in the company, but I love it. This is like the siren song of hardware. You just want it so badly to work.
Yeah. So second bubble of 2023, sustainable startup of the day.
Yeah. Here we go.
I mean, it really is. It's super interesting. Actually, that was the last anecdote I have from that event, seeing Sam Altman speak, was that someone asked him, you said it's a great time to start a company. Like, my friend really wants to start a company. What should he do? And Altman was like, probably like an AI company. And I like scampered right up to him after. And I was like, climate tech, start a climate tech company, like one or the other, right? Be intentional. Sure. There's going to be a lot of money for both, but like both of them are solving real problems that aren't going to go away. And I was like, you don't have to do nuclear fusion or carbon capture. We need software. Like, we need measurement. We need all of this stuff. But it turns out we also do need smart trash cans. Turns out we have this interesting press release. We don't know that much about funding or anything like that, but we know that there has been a release about a new product from the co-founder of Nest, Matt Rogers, who founded Nest with Tony Fadell back in 2010. Google bought Nest for $3.2 billion in 2014. And in 2020, Matt went on to co-found another startup called Mill Industries with a guy named Harry Tannenbaum. And they just released Mill's own home device, which is a smart trash bin that decreases food waste. And it doesn't even just decrease it. It like composts it. It will dry the food out, neutralize the odor with charcoal, grind food scraps overnight. And then when the bin is full, they mail you a box and you send the waste back to the company and they use it to feed chickens. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. There's
a circular composting.
There's a video on the website that I looked at this morning when I saw it come across the producer chat.
Yep.
And what's clever about this garbage can is that it's more like a compactor. So they're calling it a garbage can, like a compost garbage can. It's not that. This is a very sophisticated mechanical appliance. This is more like an appliance.
Yeah.
And so here's what this appliance does is, what happens in the video is you dump in a bunch of, banana peels. You have your egg salad sandwich is the example they use, and they show an egg salad sandwich being made. You throw the shells in, you cut off the crust, you put it all in there. There's a grinder that looks like an ice chopping machine. My dad had one of these in his bar. He liked to have chopped ice. And so I would take the buckets of ice, put it through the ice grinder, and had little spikes, and it would just rip it up, and then we'd have shaved ice. And he put the pint glasses in the ice. It was very nice to have a frosted pint. And so, as you're seeing in the video, you then in the middle of the night, I guess, it will grind everything, and it grinds it so finely, and I guess it gets rid of the smell because it's sealed and has charcoal, that it takes up less space. And unlike a compactor, which pushes it together, because this is banana peels and whatever, it grinds it, and I guess it compresses it in some way, and then you put it in a box and ship it to farms.
Yeah.
Then they take that milled product and they let chickens eat it to make more eggs.
It's not simple. Let's
it's
like, this is genius.
Yeah.
You do pay a monthly fee that includes the kitchen bin. It's $33 a month or $396 a year. If you choose the monthly payments, the service is $45 a month and the bin costs $75. They have a reservation system now for the bin. It has to be plugged in. You have to download an app so it can be connected to Wi-Fi. And then they're still working through, I will say though, I have like a little compost dealie that I got at IKEA, because not very many cities have this. We have curbside compost pickup and green bin pickup, which is great. Hardly any cities, I think, have that. the average household will empty the bin every 2 to 3 weeks, which is amazing. They're not
2 to 3 weeks. Wow.
Yeah. Like you could just be putting scraps in this thing for 2 to 3 weeks. That's amazing. But they are still working through the necessary scientific and regulatory processes to establish a safe and nutritious chicken feed ingredient that we can distribute commercially. So they're a couple steps away from making sure that they can feed this to chickens. However, amazing. Just as
if
a
you grind all that stuff
composting
up,
thing, that's amazing.
you could just, if you have a backyard, like a compost pile, you could just throw it in the compost pile, depending on how finely they grind the stuff.
Or if you even have a compost bin, you could put it in there every 2 to 3 weeks. Like I would be stoked about this, even pre-chicken feed. This is freaking amazing.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody come up with the idea of putting a grinder that shreds the stuff and makes it into like, basically sawdust. That seems to be the cool part of this. So congratulations. I think it's going to be great.
It's pretty amazing. And like, it's a pretty shocking, like the amount of, if you think like when we interviewed John Doerr, he talked about thinking in gigaton terms, like food waste is a gigaton level solution. If they can figure out how to turn this into compost that actually sequesters carbon and all of that, or even feed chickens or whatever, like that's a major impact. Not to mention just making life a little bit more awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
compost is
wonder
messy and
also when you
stinky.
use your trash compactor. I'm sorry, food. What do they call the thing in your sink that spins the food?
Garbage disposal.
I guess, is that a garbage
There's
disposal?
some other word for it, but yeah, that's
There's
what I
a
call
word
it.
for it. I forgot what the name of that thing is that we all have in our sinks here in California. We never had them in New York. They were illegal in New York City. And those...
I'm really distracted by producer Brian, who lives in Canada, who calls it a garburator.
It's a garbage, yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Is that a thing you call it in Canada? I've never heard that word before. Anyway, garbage disposal.
It's ripping apart, your eggshells, and we will put fruit in there or banana peels or whatever. I think you can put a pretty decent lemon peels or whatever. That in and of itself, I think puts all those nutrients eventually into the ocean to be eaten by fish, I think.
I think so.
But yeah, I guess it is called a garburator. But
food
this
waste,
would then...
It's called a garburator. Food waste accounts for 8 to 10% of human greenhouse gas emissions every year. Like this is the stuff that gives you like an individual... Composting is a huge part of solving for that because it means that you reuse waste instead of have waste go to like landfill and be trucked somewhere and be this big, huge mess. So it makes it smaller. It has a circularity aspect. The food itself is not wasted. It's not rotting in landfill. It fills and like off gassing. So yeah,
there's a reason
it doesn't fix it all, but composting is considered like a very large part of that food waste equation.
Yeah, and if it doesn't have to be shipped anywhere, that clearly helps. And there's a reason why when you have these giant landfills, you see seagulls like by the thousands over them as they're picking it apart to try to find food. So yeah, better to just use it to feed more chickens.
And keep it out of landfill. Landfill is like landfill's a problem.
I think in my austerity, my next...
You should get some chickens. Eggs are really expensive now. I think that's kind
of my next step in austerity measures is... Actually, wow, thinking about that, because of some influenza or something that happened, eggs went up to $5 a dozen, I heard, or something like that.
Bird flu, avian flu, yeah.
That, which is significant, I think, because I think we're paying $3 a dozen eggs or something, $2 or $3. Somebody high quality.
Somebody posted paying like $22 for 18 eggs. It's
what?
Like eggs.
Oh yeah, organic ones, good eggs. Yeah,
yeah. You get the $5 eggs already. But yes, the average wholesale price of a dozen eggs in California was over $7 in January.
Wow, 50 cents an egg.
And I was at Costco yesterday. No eggs. Costco did not have any eggs. Zero. Crazy. Because the cheap ones are like, there's like a run on the cheap ones.
I love the idea of people being more independent and having chickens on their property. In the peninsula in Silicon Valley, many people, as more of, I think, a status object, have chicken coops. Is that popular in the East Bay as well?
Yeah. Chickens are big. Totally. Backyard chickens, it's a thing.
NPR chickens, it's just...
Backyard.
NPR
chickens is hilarious.
That's hilarious, like a virtue signaling
That's
chickens.
so funny.
But the interesting thing about the virtue signaling chickens is we have a neighbor who has a coop and they can't keep up with their egg consumption. So every couple of months, they will literally ring our bell and like their kids will just drop off 24 eggs because
decentralization is the future.
I think it's a very cool idea is to have
I would have chickens if I could. I have an HOA.
Oh.
Yeah. Wah, wah.
Chickens, actually, that would be a really cool idea too, is if you do have an HOA and you do have 30, 40 homes in your homeowners association to put a common chicken coop and let people have access to it. And then
community chickens.
Community chickens.
Oh my God, I love it.
Well, community-backed NPR chickens. Yeah.
Right. Community-backed NPR chickens. Exactly. Everybody has a mug and a tote bag, and you carry your chicken feed in your tote bag.
The problem with this startup is, I know they're going for subscriptions here, is if this works, somebody in China is going to just copy it and knock it off and make a better version and just sell you a $50 amazing compost grinding, and you're just going to throw it into your compost, and you're not going to go through sending it back for chicken feed or whatever.
I mean, I got to say, this is the thing they need to nail in order to beat that coming competition is the chicken feed part, because that's a huge revenue stream. If they can actually get through all the hurdles to turn this into legit chicken feed or any other kind, if they can make it an agricultural feedstock, then people will pay them to come and get it. But yeah, if it's just the trash can grinding up my food and compacting it, hell yeah, I would pay a lot of money for that, but like probably not every month.
I bet you there's one that exists already. I bet you there's a trash can you can buy right now that does this.
Matt, we're going to need you to come on the show and explain to us why this is going to be so awesome and why you can't be beat. Why you can't be beat.
Yeah. Well done. Is there another startup of the day?
We have another startup of the day, actually, also literally accidentally in the sustainability space because bubble. But the other one, and I'm just amazed by this, is Sollum Technologies, Sollum, like the sun, Sollum, is making moves in the greenhouse produce space. This is this also is a growing part of the climate conversation, because as like areas warm or are constantly flooded or are constantly in drought or, so hot you can't grow stuff, figuring out alternative sources for agriculture is super important. And so this company, Sollum Technologies, just raised $30 million, including a $25 million check from a single private equity firm, Idealist Capital, that supports entrepreneurs going after energy transition and decarbonization. And I love this because it's basically grow lights. It's grow house lights, but apparently they've figured out some technology that makes the lights, they can just like remotely mimic perfectly the sun. Like they're powered by AI to reproduce the full spectrum of the sun's natural light. They have sun as a service, which unfortunately spells sun ass.
Yes, sun ass. Yeah, you knew that was coming. Yeah.
So that was kind of maybe a naming miss there. But it's a cloud platform powered by AI. This is actually merging the two bubbles with a dedicated support team of engineers, technicians, and agronomists. And then this support that includes installation, maintenance. And they claim their solution saves 40% on energy, produces better taste. They've been able to apparently increase productivity of certain crops by 40%, like strawberries, which are, obviously not a year-round crop in various places and can get super expensive and are hard to grow. And it's like modern greenhousing.
Fascinating. Using AI to make the lights more efficient. That's something they do in solar, right? I think you had somebody on who was making technology to move the solar panels to capture the sun, right? And so this is kind of the reverse of that, using software to optimize the sun on the plants.
Right.
And then eventually this will become full cycle. You'll be figuring out through AI and machine learning over time. So this is where the reinforcement learning that I think Chamath was talking about a whole bunch on the last All In, the learning part of this. Well, what if you could take what the lights are doing with the eventual bounty? So, hey, we went for it and we increased the lighting 20%. Okay, did that increase? Was that energy worth it? And it's like, actually, it turns out, we got 3%, more robust strawberries. This crop had 3% more strawberries and they were 1% better, but they didn't taste as good. Or it wasn't worth, the squeeze wasn't worth the juice.
Right.
And I just love that expression, the squeeze and the juice. Is the squeeze worth the juice here? And I don't know if it is, and that's what AI is going to teach us is optimization.
Yeah.
Whether it's for our bodies.
Squeeze.
Oh, what did I say? Is the
juice? He says the squeeze worth the juice.
I'm sick, guys. So my voice may not be hard, but my logic is broken.
I like it because either way it works because the squeeze is like a lot of work, and it's like, is the juice really worth the squeeze? But is the juice worth the squeeze?
Is what we're talking about here, and so that's going to be awesome, and it might be some crops. Each crop might be different. If you're doing like a strain of cannabis, which is what these lighting systems. The reason a lot of investment went into these lighting systems was for crops that were worth a lot of money, and so whenever we saw this technology, any kind of smart growth technology, it was for the most expensive things. The two most expensive things I've seen are berries and weed. Yeah. I don't know which crop is actually more expensive.
I don't know either, but that's so funny because yes, exactly. It might be. It could be
your Girl Scout cookies. I don't know. It could be your OG Kush, whatever. Could be the more important one. But, it's interesting. We were talking about that bin. Vitamix?
Yeah.
Vitamix like to make, I have a Vitamix.
The juicer or whatever.
The juicer,
the world's best blender, yeah.
The world's best blender. It's like every chef uses a Vitamix.
Mm-hmm.
They cost $300, $400. I've had the same one for over a decade.
They're hella nice.
Make smoothies in it, whatever. Check this out. That's Vitamix. Vitamix has a product called the Food Cycler. What's a food cycler, you ask? Well, if you scroll down to the videos and you just press play on the video, and you fast forward it just a wee bit, what you'll see is everybody in your household goes to the food cycler, and when you're scraping your plates, instead of putting it down there, you will see they put a bunch of stuff in there. And once they dump the stuff in there, it turns on, and what does it do? It turns it into sawdust, just like the garbage can. Sorry to be
okay. To be fair, thermostats existed when Nest came out.
Sure.
And what happened? Nest.
Yeah, better form
took
factor.
Over,
is great.
Right? Better form factor, more functionality.
Mm-hmm.
You can still build a better mousetrap. And presumably that's what this company. However, I'm totally buying this Vitamix composter thing. This is amazing.
I'm looking at it right now.
I want this.
Yeah, I'm looking. When I do the Amazon reviews, there are, if you go down to the bottom, instead of doing the one from Vitamix, if you scroll down, there's a review and demo of it from like a consumer, and they put like paper towels in it. If you go down to the bottom, the first one on the left there, it's from DIY Life.
I put paper towels in my compost.
The output quite nicely. It's a good looking machine, but what it does is it actually, part of this process is heating it, apparently. So you dry it, I guess, to get the moisture out. So you're not just making slop. So you dry it, and look at that.
God, you can put your coffee grounds in there.
Yeah. But I guess because it dries it, and look at, you're putting paper towels in it as well. So she's wiping down the table here. I'll describe for people watching. So she just put paper towels in there, eggshells, coffee grinds, the whole bit. And then when you look at what the output looks like, again, it looks like sawdust. And then to top off the consumer review here, they take it, and I guess the heat's the key part because I guess hot air is blowing out of it. She takes it and dumps it into her pots to make, I guess, fertilizer out of it.
Yeah.
So, pretty dope.
Dude.
I kind of want that now.
I'm going to buy this.
Sorry, I just cost you $200 for watching the show.
$322.
That's
freaking
Vitamix. That's nuts. Yeah, there should expensive. Be a $99 version of this.
Yeah, but that's the same as the new one that doesn't make
1 year of the new one,
but without a monthly fee. That's 1 year of the new one with no monthly fee.
I was assuming the new one didn't have a price up front, so this is 1 year of the new one, I guess.
Dang.
So this is an existing product category that we were not aware of.
Yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah, I think
I could get this for just $26.83 a month for 12 months, interest free.
Oh yeah. Are you getting over your skis, Molly? Don't
buy now, compost later.
Buy now, compost later.
No, I will only
compost
buy
now,
it.
Pay later.
Compost now, pay later.
Exactly. Squeeze that juice.
Damn, that's cool.
Well, congratulations to both of these hardware companies.
Yes.
And let's save the planet.
Let's do it. Let's do this.
I'm big on the waste thing. I don't know that this is a great investment category for venture capitalists, but I think it's a great category for humanity. I've been so obsessed over the last year or two with austerity measures and waste.
Mm-hmm.
And really just the less waste we have per household is just so significant. That's why I think making the cold brew coffee instead of me ordering all of those packaging, I really want to find a great sparkling water. This is the one I haven't solved. The sparkling water I have from, what's the one everybody uses where you push the top down?
SodaStream.
SodaStream. Everybody hates SodaStream. It doesn't come out good. It's too much work.
Yeah.
I want a tap, a SodaStream tap. Like I have a hot water tap. It has to be convenient. So I want to be able to have, just like when you would go to an ice cream shop in the day and they would just pull the, sparkling water from a tap. I want
This
tap sparkling
this
water.
definitely exists. I know I looked this up.
It definitely exists, but I think it's very expensive. I see it at restaurants. Like I just want it in my tap and then under my sink to have a giant CO2 thing. And I see hackers are making this themselves. So you can buy, but there's no great.
I got a whole situation that the DIY guy made. It's like a brewer. It's like a huge stainless steel canister filled with carbon dioxide with a, And it works, but there's a company called Grohe, Grohe.
It's a German company.
And they make water filter kitchen taps that include carbonation. So it'd be expensive
exactly what I'm looking for
up front, but it's exactly what you're looking for.
I want it filtered and I want it to have carbonation. Fantastic. Look at that. It's good looking too. See, I think you have to make this very easy for people. If you want people to do this stuff, it has to be easier than ordering from Instacart or Amazon.
And this is definitely easier. It's just, so it starts at $2,900. So it takes you a lot of LaCroix orders to recoup your money.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to take years.
Yeah.
Like if we're spending $200 a month or $100
can you
or $200
put
a
a
month
price on the planet?
Actually, yeah, maybe it's not. I mean, $100 a month on cans. If this cut it in half, $50 a month, you would need to have 60 months to pay for it or something.
That's not terrible. Yeah, but
it's like a lot of things where
you still have to buy carbon dioxide. Like you have to buy the tanks and stuff, I would assume.
That's why I put it at half, like
right.
savings.
Of half. Sorry. Yes, you did say that.
If we were spending $100 on cans, this saved us $50 a month on cans or something for the equivalent to maintain it. Maybe it's worth it.
And don't forget the value of smug is infinite.
This is the NPR carbonator. NPR carbonator for your virtual signaling. I mean, I came up with a new one.
Tweeted the other day and I was like, thank you for saying this because I think this all the time. There was a tweet that was like, I don't really understand why virtue signaling is like a bad thing. Like every one of us has virtues. Why wouldn't we signal them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't really understand. Like, it's sort of like, actually, good point.
Yeah.
It's when you're fake. It's when you're lying about your virtues.
Yes.
But like
when it's greenwashing,
that's just hypocrisy. We already have a word for that.
Yeah. I mean, if I was using, the food cycler, but then I had my thermostat on 82 in the winter and 56 in the summer, I had this new idea. I came up with a new system because I was hacking my Nest, and it's called Put On a Sweater. It's a new plugin. And
is it an app? Hold on, putonasweater.com.
No, it's just me yelling at the rest of my family who are walking around in shorts in the winter and a t-shirt or a tank top, and they're putting the heat on 78. And then I have to tell the 4 ladies I live with, put on a sweater.
Oh my God.
Or if you wear socks and pants, then maybe we don't have to keep the heat at 78.
That is one weird thing about the Bay Area that people probably don't realize. And that when I moved here, I was like, why am I freezing all the time in my new town that I live in? Like always cold. It's that like no one, as a matter of just cultural competency, and I don't even know where it came from, the heat never goes above 68. Like I almost innately believe that my thermostat is not capable of going above 68. Like
I'm in a Bikram yoga class here. Like,
I know you really are.
Like, ladies,
no wonder you're sick.
Get dressed. Here's an idea. Get dressed. It's not August. You're wearing the equivalent of a bathing suit. Put on pants.
Hilarious.
Wear socks. a t-shirt and a sweater. And, I'm not saying you have to wear a jacket in the house, but you could put a sweater on and we could keep the heat at 66 or 68.
Hoodies are in. Hoodies are the look right now.
Come on, people.
All right.
Ridiculous. All right. What a great show. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.